You are listening to the 2 and Out CFL podcast, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network.
And I'm Travis Currah here to recap week 19 of the 2024 CFL season. It is a little after midnight. I just got back from a Thanksgiving weekend in Jasper National Park, and Sheldon Jones is fast asleep. So let's go through some Canadian football. And if you are Canadian, I hope you had a great Thanksgiving. I would love to hear what you're doing with all of those leftover turkeys. Are you making buns? Are you making soup? Are you doing both? Oh, the joy of leftover turkey and the gelatinous gravy in the back of your fridge. I could never figure out why it was all lumpy, but that's part of the joy, isn't it? I think I kind of like that. I want to go to this comment on our website, 2andout.ca. You can go there anytime, and it's Barry who says, as an American who has really come to love Canadian football, I really love your podcast. You are informative, and I love how you guys enjoy talking CFL football. It's a must-see for me weekly. Well, Barry, thanks so much for listening to the show. I hope you love the CFL more and more every week. And it started off Friday Night Football. The Toronto Argonauts beating the Winnipeg Blue Bombers 14-11. So that means the Hamilton Tiger Cats are eliminated from playoff contention. The Argos are in. It also means the Bombers not quite clinched first in the West yet. So there was something on the line for the Bombers in this one. That being said, Winnipeg's last loss was July 27th against the same Toronto Argonauts. It was a 16-14 win that time. Both low-scoring games, but Toronto seems to be the little pebble in Winnipeg's shoe over the last little while. Don't need to remind Bomber fans about the 2022 Grey Cup, that's when Toronto really got onto this trajectory outside of, well, let's face it, that East final last year against Montreal. I will go to X, where Wally Walker is a diehard Hamilton Tiger Cat fan, and got to visit with him and have brunch with him last year in the Hammer. And we went to this place called the Electric Diner. I must highly recommend it. I crushed about a dozen cups of coffee and had these strawberry cheesecake pancakes. Well, to mark the Ticats being eliminated from playoff contention, Wally Walker went to the Electric Diner, and I don't know how much caffeine he ingested, but he did have those strawberry cheesecake pancakes, and man, those are good. So I hope that took the sting off just a little bit. Wally, now early in this game, it was the Argos getting ahead in this one. They got on the board first, and wow, I mean, what a drive. It was 7 plays, 72 yards. It ended with a David Ungerer touchdown to put the Argos on the board. Now, in this one, Jake Thomas took a penalty. It was 1st and 10 on the Winnipeg 26, but it did obviously give Toronto a free 15 yards to get him closer to the goal line. But what happened was Tavares Daniels was offside. It appeared to me that maybe Jake Thomas didn't hear the whistle. The raucous Princess Auto Stadium crowd, he wouldn't use that as an excuse in this one, but it didn't look like he hit Kelly too hard, or really at all. But the flag was drawn and free yards were given to the Toronto Argonauts, and they took advantage of it, getting the touchdown there. And then this game was really a grind. The Bombers had their opportunities, though. They were moving the ball. They had a chance in the first quarter to get on the board with a field goal, but Sergio Castillo, who we've seen kick from 60 a couple times, He was no good from 42 yards. And then on the next possession by the Bombers, they end up getting on the board with a field goal, but it was later in the half when the Bombers got shut down on the goal line. And that would be, I think, the theme in this game, where this Toronto Argonauts defensive line was all over the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Ben Grant from 3downnation.com calls them the Toronto Sack Exchange. And I would say that is a pretty darn good way to describe this team, because that fumble ends up coming with 6:38 left in the first quarter. Sorry, it wasn't a fumble, but Winnipeg ended up getting the ball because of a fumble. Janarian Grant ends up fumbling a punt. The Bombers recover, and then they get down to the goal line. It is 3rd and goal from the 1, and the Bombers get stuffed. Now, you can't review these things. It did look like to me maybe the ball did cross the goal line, but either way, the Bombers get stuffed there, and that was absolutely critical, because then it was the next drive when Sergio Castillo missed the field goal. So they were moving the ball, they were knocking on the door, and they couldn't quite get it done. But at the beginning of the second quarter, Cameron Dukes got stuffed on 3rd and 1, and that ended up becoming a Bomber field goal a few plays later, getting them on the board. But this game goes into halftime 13-4 for the visitors, the Toronto Argonauts here. And if you go to the stats here, Chad Kelly, other than that first drive, 16 of 23, 203 yards and a touchdown. That's what he did, but didn't really need to do much, didn't turn the ball over or anything like that, because if you do look at the stats, Zach Collaros was sacked 7 times by the Argos. There was a fumble in there as well. It was just a game where the Argos were all over him. Flo Arimolade had 2 sacks. Mark Milton, the DB, he had a sack in this one. Soresna, Parrish, Hawley, they add sacks. Oh, Jared Brinkman, he's causing troubles there. This Argo team looks like a team that I don't want to deal with. It seems like that defense is back. They had some sort of health issues, I think, with that defensive line. And during this win streak for the Bombers, I don't think Zach was really dealing with this much trouble. That's what the Argos brought. They were bringing the heat, and well, they weren't even really blitzing all that much. And Winnipeg they couldn't really get it going because of that fact. Now, in the second half, Winnipeg did have a couple long drives, and guess what? They had another missed field goal. That was at the beginning of the fourth quarter. Sergio Castillo missing from 48 yards. So those are critical points off the board for Winnipeg. And then the next drive, 84 yards, 5 minutes off the clock. Finally, they're able to push the ball into the end zone with Wilson from the 1 yard line. That puts the Bombers down by 2 points, 4 minutes left. And then they make a good stop. They get the ball, 2.5 minutes left. And to me, I really thought, oh boy, the Bombers are going to get good field position here. They're going to get into field goal position, and they're going to send Toronto packing. And it looked like it was on that way. But at the Winnipeg 52, 127 left, Zach Collaros is sacked by Folarin Arimolade. And what a play. 3rd and 17. Zach goes to run for the first down. He dives. Winton McManus ends up meeting him in the air and pushing him out of bounds. Now, look, I think we all watched this play with how much it was being reviewed, about 15 times. And I don't know how the officials decided to spot this thing, but they did. And it ended up being a few inches short. And what a play that was by McManus. And what an effort from Zach Collaros, I think. And then, you know what? It gets challenged. They want this ball spotted again. Well, the play stood. And it appeared that a player squirted a referee with a water bottle. So Winnipeg ended up taking an objectionable conduct penalty there. But if the Bombers are going to want to beat the Argos this year, it's going to have to be in the Grey Cup, and there's going to be, I would say, 4 or 5 teams that have something to say about that from either team that wants to be in the Grey Cup. Winnipeg was very disciplined, 2 penalties for 25 yards, but it was the protection and the sacks that Zach was taking. It was really tough to overcome for the Bombers. Toronto did take 7 penalties for 76 yards, but they were running the ball well early with Kadeem Carey. He had 5 carries for 39 yards, but he left the game with back spasms, and that might be a good reason why the Argos offense ended up stalling. Their lead receiver was Mackay Polk, who had 4 catches, 82 yards in this one. If we look at Winnipeg's side, Kenny the King Lawler, 6 catches, 108 yards. It felt like once Zach started looking his way that maybe the Bombers were going to get into this one and get out of it with a victory by at least a field goal. But with that D-line from Toronto causing all those problems, it was a difficult one for Winnipeg to get back and win. Brady Oliveira, 12 carries for 64 yards in this one. So Winnipeg's win streak comes to an end, and now they actually do need to win their last game against the Montreal Alouettes to clinch a West Division game. If they don't win that game, well, then Saskatchewan beats Calgary and they can host the West Final, which is crazy to think about. It's too bad they're not playing each other in week 21 because, look, Calgary and Montreal likely not playing their starters, and that will decide who's going to be hosting the Western Final. As for Toronto, they've been kind of limping a little bit, but now they look like a playoff team, and they're coming off the bye. Ryan Dinwiddie is 10-1 coming off the bye, a team that I don't think I want to play. And now the Ottawa RedBlacks have to play them. We're going to talk about those Ottawa RedBlacks, but Toronto is currently in the driver's seat to host that Eastern semifinal when it looked like Ottawa was going to be the team to host that game. The Saturday doubleheader, Week 19 in the CFL, started in Calgary, where the Edmonton Elks go and get a 23-18 victory. Now, the game started with, I think, a couple opportunities here for the Calgary Stampeders to go get a win. Trey Ford on the first possession in their first play from scrimmage gets sacked in the end zone by global DB Divine Scott. So the Stamps go up 2-0 early in this one. Cody Grace pinning the Elks down at the 5-yard line. So it was a tough spot for the Elks in this one. Well, the next drive, and I'd be interested to know what you think about this rule, because the Stamps are driving down. They hit Reggie Begelton for a 54-yarder, and then they're at the 14-yard line, and Schultz kind of flips it up. So the play is that Reggie Begelton kind of grabs it from the backfield and goes and does what he does. So the fact that he flipped it up in front of him meant that it was a pass and not a handoff. But come on, is that really a pass? And look, I think they probably do it this way, so if it gets screwed up, it gets called incomplete instead of a fumble. Well, that's exactly what happened here. I think Edmonton probably thought they had a nice little fumble recovery there, but by the rules, and this is what they say, it ends up being called an incomplete pass. The Stamps get lucky there, I think, because of those rules, and they end up going up 5-0 early in this game. But then as the quarter goes on a little bit here, the Trey Ford goes on a bit of a roll, especially in the second quarter. He goes on a heater, and then that's when the Elks get on the board here. Eugene Lewis scores the first touchdown early in the second quarter for the Elks. So that was a rushing touchdown, actually. Maybe they were trying exactly what the Stamps were trying with Reggie Begelton, but it works. And Gino gets into the end zone. That makes it his 7th consecutive game with a touchdown. It wasn't a receiving touchdown yet for Gino Lewis, but he does get one later in the game. Now, later on in the game, I think the Stamps end up contacting the kicker penalty. They had all sorts of opportunities in this one, but the offense couldn't really consistently get going, and the Elks really dominated the second quarter. That was the big part in this one. They put 16 points on the board. Edmonton goes into the half up 16-5, and they're looking to sweep the Stampeders for the first time since 2002 in a season. Yeah, over 20 years since Edmonton has swept Calgary in a season series. Obviously, the Labor Day record, not very good for Edmonton over the years, but they're looking to make it happen in this one. Well, Calgary ends up fighting back. And they're down 17-5. And Matt Schultz engineers a pretty good drive. 12 plays, 80 yards, 5.5 minutes off the clock. It ends in a Jalen Philpott touchdown, putting the Stampeders within a score. Well, then the next series, Trey Ford ends up getting intercepted. So then after that, in great field position for the Calgary Stampeders, it ends in a Tommy Stevens touchdown. Stamps take the lead 18-17. Well, the problem was Calgary could not stop the run. That has been a theme throughout this season, and it really took over in the fourth quarter because Justin Rankin ran all over them on the next drive. They gave him the ball for 3 consecutive plays. Well, in those 3 consecutive plays, he got 46 yards rushing there. And then Trey Ford converts the first down by hitting Currah Gittens Jr. Well, not quite the first down, but the 3rd and 1, which the Elks end up converting with Dakota Prukop. Well, guess who gets the ball 2 more times? Justin Rankin. That's 17 more yards, and then Trey Ford hits Gino Lewis for the touchdown. The Elks take the lead 23-18, and the Stamps get all the way down the field. 1st and 5. 2 seconds left on the Elks 5-yard line. Now, this is after, I don't know what you thought, watching the Mark and Michelle Kai Gray play. Gray gets called for pass interference. I thought it was kind of a bogus play, but it was pass interference. It was challenged. It stood. So the Stamps got a chance here to take the win on the last play of the game. That's all they wanted. That's all they needed. But Matt Schultz ends up overthrowing the receiver on the play, and the Elks leave McMahon Stadium with a win despite the Stamps putting up 13 points in the fourth quarter. Matthew Schultz did run for 64 yards in this one. He threw for 215 yards, but was 18 of 33 with a touchdown and an interception. And Trey Ford, on the other hand, goes 23 of 29, 208 yards, 2 interceptions, a touchdown in this one. He only ran 3 times for 33 yards, which is a bit of a change that we've seen from Trey, but he went on a heater in the second quarter, and he put together a really nice game and got the win. But again, that rushing output from Justin Rankin, 10 carries, 140 yards. Do the math there. Not good from the rush defense in Calgary on that one. The leading receiver for the Elks was Tevin Jones, 6 catches, 76 yards in this one. If we look at the stats for the Stampeders, Reggie Bagleton was the leader there, 5 catches, 79 yards. And Dedrick Mills, he only ended up getting 7 carries, 36 yards in this one. The leading tackler for the Stamps was Tyler Richardson. He had 7 tackles in this one, but Ben LaBrosse, the rookie that the Stamps drafted in this one, he had 6 tackles as a rookie halfback, a Canadian halfback, and he had 1 knockdown in this one. It seems like the Stamps are very high on his play so far. Luchez Purifoy, 2 knockdowns for the Edmonton Elks and 2 tackles. Derek Moncrief had 2 sacks and 6 tackles in this one. He was kind of all over the field in this one, including a stop behind the line of scrimmage. It looked like it surprised him. I think he thought he probably should have been offside, but he was not offside in this one. So the Elks, you know what, they moved to 6-11 on the season, but hey, well, I guess when at least half of your wins come against Calgary, does it count? Yeah, I think it does count, but hey, that's 2 more wins than they had the last couple years. Things are moving up in Edmonton, but still questions to be answered. What's their leadership going to look like going into next season? What's their quarterback room going to look like going into next season? And that's probably a question that fans have in Calgary as well. What is that going to look like in 2025? And you know that those fans aren't going to accept losing to Edmonton, being swept by Edmonton this season. Not a thing that any Alberta team wants to experience. Well, and then we go to Regina for that second half of that doubleheader where the Roughriders smash the BC Lions 39-8. And I want to go to this comment that came in to the 2-and-Out mailbag, 2andout.ca, if you would like to write the show. It's from Darren, who says, it's not a question, it's just a comment. I've not heard it talked about, but the BC Lions brought this mess on themselves. They invited locker room conflict when they signed Rourke and gave him the keys. I've been in a lot of locker rooms, and locker room drama can kill a team. And in this case, I believe it is. I'm quite sure that there are at least some guys in that locker room who feel like Vernon Adams should be playing. This looks like a fractured locker room to me, and they brought it on themselves. Yeah, Nathan Rourke comes in highly touted. I don't think that a lot of this stuff is all on him, of course, but if what Darren is alluding to is what's happening, and, you know, the guys believed in the team that they had going into training camp with Vernon Adams Jr., who was playing MOP level football early in the season, June, July, he does get hurt. and maybe that slowed down the pace a little bit for him, but the rhythm completely thrown off when Nathan Rourke comes in, and Rick Campbell's asked about it all the time. You know, are you going to throw Vernon Adams Jr. in? And he seems to consistently say no. Nathan Rourke's our guy. We need to get the rhythm. We need to get the reps and all this sort of stuff. But when Rourke was first signed, we were led to believe that it wasn't the last that we were going to see from Vernon Adams Jr. But now it appears like, well, that's the case. So it's interesting to see, or to wonder what brought on that comment in the first place and why that hasn't gone that way. Look, these interceptions aren't all on Nathan Rourke's shoulders. That first one, A.J. Allen takes to the house on the first possession to put the Riders up 7-0. I think TSN counted. It ended up getting bobbled about 9 times. In that one, it was bobbled in every which direction, and the Riders take it to the house, and they take the lead. The Riders take a 10-1 lead after Flintoff ended up getting a punt single for the team. They end up... everything was going right for the Riders. They go up 13-1, and then there was a sequence when it got even more difficult for the BC Lions. But not after, the second quarter began. The Lions actually had a pretty nice drive. 11 plays, 70 yards. They ate 5 minutes of clock, and they score a touchdown. David Mackey rushes it in, and they're down 13-8 at that point. But the Riders answer back with a field goal, and then this is when it kind of, I think, the wheels fall off even more for the Lions, because David Mackey gets stuffed on 3rd and 2. It wasn't even really close at all. And then on the next possession for the Lions, Nathan Rourke hits Justin McInnes. He ends up fumbling the ball. The Riders recover it, and then Jarrett Stearns gets hit for a touchdown a few plays later. It's 22-8 BC at that, or Saskatchewan at that point. And then the next possession for the Lions, Rourke gets intercepted by CJ Avery. So that second quarter was just a complete collapse from the Lions. This is where the questions come in. Is Vernon Adams Jr. going to get in there for the second half? He never was put in there at all. Now, that one where Justin McInnes caught and fumbled it, I feel like this has been a theme over the past month or so. I feel like we've seen plays like that where they call it incomplete. But, well, hey, this one, nope. The play stood. It worked in Saskatchewan's favor. There have been reviews that have not worked in their favor, to say the least, in this one. But the Lions get shut out in the second half too. And the Riders start with a field goal. Their next possession, Kean Schaefer-Baker gets a touchdown. Like, it's 36-8 early in the third quarter. So the BC quarterback that ends up getting the playing time here ends up being Chase Bryce. 9 of 14, 92 yards. Nathan Rourke's final stat line was 15 of 23, 200 yards, and 2 interceptions in this one. Justin McInnes was the leading receiver, 6 catches for 119 yards. But look, 1 touchdown drive from the BC Lions, an offense that I think we all expected to put up points, and they did early in the year. But since Rourke has come in, they haven't been able to string 2 nice games together. They haven't been able to consistently put up points. It's been a problem. And I think the pressure's on. And the showing in this game, where they had an opportunity to at least fight to earn a home playoff game before a Grey Cup in Vancouver, that has to be discouraging for BC Lions fans, to say the very least, because in a couple weeks, this all but confirms it. They're heading to BC or they're heading to Regina or Winnipeg. It's not completely decided yet, but it is decided that BC is heading east and won't be having a home playoff game in this one. AJ Ouellette returns to the lineup for the Riders. He ran hard, 16 carries, 84 yards for him. The leading receiver for the Riders ended up being Samuel Emelis with 6 catches, 94 yards. Jarrett Stearns, he had 6 catches, 60 yards, and a touchdown in this one. I mean, what do you say? It just really looked like the Riders wanted it more. They kicked 6 field goals on 6 attempts. I mean, the Lions didn't even have a field goal attempt in this one. Like, if I go and pull up that drive chart, it's probably not pretty for the Lions. But if you look at the Riders one, they punted the ball 4 times. And that ended up being 3 of the 4 were their last 3 drives when they were already up, 27, 28 points. It was just domination from the get-go by the Riders in this one, and it's back to the drawing board for the BC Lions. It's just, when are they going to get this figured out? It kind of feels like this is next year territory for the Lions. Now, there are a couple teams that are limping into the playoffs. I'll say the Lions are one of them. The RedBlacks are the other team. It wasn't long ago when they were 8-3-1, and many people across the CFL were surprised by Ottawa's record. Well, now they're 8-7-1. And I don't think folks are as surprised at this record anymore. 4 consecutive losses for the RedBlacks after they go into Montreal and they lose 19-12 in this one. Now, I wanted to put this comment in front of you from Bomber fan Vic. He says, you put too much emphasis on the 2 sellouts this past week, one in Winnipeg. But he says, let's be real. Montreal Stadium only holds 20,000. So I guess technically it's sold out. But if 20,000 was the bar, every Western game would be sold out. I don't know if it does us really any good to compare the stadiums. But, I mean, it's what Montreal has. It's what they got. 23,035 fans in attendance at Percival Molson for a Thanksgiving Day Classic. I mean, the game wasn't classic. It was rainy. It was kind of miserable in this one. But a good crowd still showed up. And it wasn't long ago when, the Alouettes, they had a different starting quarterback every week, and the crowds were dwindling. Well, now they're back, and not only are people watching in the stands, they're watching on TV. Sometimes they're the highest rated. Well, many times this year they've been in the highest rated game when you factor in the RDS ratings as well. For the Alouettes, like the attention they're getting really seems to be special in this one. And the win they got with backup quarterback Davis Alexander was mentioned on the broadcast. With backup quarterbacks this year, the Alouettes are undefeated. So, at times maybe I thought they didn't face much adversity so far this year. Well, I guess going with your backup quarterback as often as they have had to, I guess that's adversity. This one a little bit different. Congratulations to the Fajardo family for welcoming another baby into the world. So Cody Fajardo not playing in this one, as the Alouettes do have the East Division locked up. Davis Alexander goes 14 of 24. He does throw an interception, 208 yards was his yardage total. The interception that he threw, that was a pretty rough one. I think he wants that one back for sure. He did run for a touchdown, though. 6 rushes, 45 yards in this game for Davis Alexander. But the story of the game, it's simple. It's Ottawa beating themselves. The amount of penalties that they took. 12 penalties, 122 yards. Now, Money Hunter ended up taking 2 flags on 1 play. I think it was an unnecessary roughness when he shoves the player out of bounds, and he took a face mask, which kind of ticky-tack, I thought, because it did look like Austin Mack grabbed his face mask as well. But either way, it was half the distance to the goal twice. Otherwise, the yardage total would have been even higher. But regardless, it's just like anything that Ottawa did would end up being ruined by taking a touchdown. Or a penalty. They took a contacting the kicker penalty. They took penalties on returns, negating good field position. It was just a rough game from Bob Dice's squad. And I don't know what it was. If the crowd was in their head, if the Alouettes were trash-talking them and in their head here, but Ottawa beat themselves in this one. I know it's cliche, but the mistakes that they were making on special teams, Lewis Ward gets blocked to get on the board first. I think the only break that they may have gotten was when it was Jason Moss ended up challenging an interference on their Elijah McGee for the RedBlacks. I don't know. That looked like interference to me. They don't give him the flag. He was legitimately laughing. I don't even know what you do anymore. You might as well just throw the flag and pray, I guess. That's all you can do. But Lewis Ward's attempt gets blocked in the first quarter. Then the very next drive is when Money Hunter took the unnecessary roughness and the face mask. So then Davis Alexander gets into the end zone on that one. And the RedBlacks take a objectionable conduct after the touchdown. Like, it was brutal. Flag after flag after flag. They did mix it up with Jeremiah Masoli starting here and Dustin Crum getting into the game a little bit, but the offense couldn't really get a rhythm going. Credit to the RedBlacks. They fought back in this game in the second half. The Alouettes offense, they weren't really rolling. Walter Fletcher had a big play in the first half that was a big part of getting them on the board first. But Fletcher, he had a 34-yarder in this one. Other than that, he had 10 carries for 37 yards in this one. There was a big deep play to Keon Julian Grant that ended up getting broken up. It was a big opportunity for the Owls. Probably should have had that catch. Charleston Rambo had an opportunity to catch a touchdown pass there, but Austin Mack was the leading receiver for the Alouettes, who had 4 catches and 92 yards in this one. But in the third quarter, the RedBlacks really seemed to start moving the ball a little bit. They open the half with a field goal there. They kick it from the 10-yard line. So they moved the ball down, but then ended up having to settle for 3 points. They get another 3 points, and they pull within 4 points of the Alouettes in this one. But then a bad throw from Jeremiah Masoli ends in a Wesley Sutton interception. The Alouettes end up going up 10 again. The RedBlacks answer back with a field goal. They're down by 7. And they do have an opportunity with 2 minutes left, but that's when Noel Thorpe really dialed up the pressure, and Jeremiah Masoli got sacked, twice on that drive, and that ended up ending their opportunity to tie this game or win the game or send it to overtime. But when you don't score a touchdown and you give up more than a football field worth of yards in penalties, you're not going to win many games. So much like the BC Lions having the effort and the showing that they did in Regina, I think RedBlacks fans probably a bit discouraged after this showing in Montreal, where the RedBlacks are on a bit of a skid. 3 losses in a row heading into this one, needing to win a game, to have a home playoff game, to host the Argos in the East semi-final. Well, now they still have that chance. They do. But all they needed to do was play a little bit better, more disciplined in this one, and they could have beat the Alouettes. Instead, they need to go to Toronto, a team that just dominated Winnipeg's offensive line, and they need to try to win at BMO Field against the Argos. Well, Ottawa is 2-6 on the road. Toronto is 6-2 at home. Of course, the deck is now stacked against Ottawa, who is 8-7-1 on the season, and the Alouettes are 12-3-1 on the season. That's week 19 of this 2024 CFL season. We're winding down. Week 20 has the Stamps and the Ticats. It has the RedBlacks and the Argos, which I just talked about, and the Alouettes and the Lions. The last 2 games of this, well, there's 3 more games that really matter. You know, they have standings implications. It's going to be that Ottawa-Toronto game. That one's going to be on CTV Saturday afternoon, and then the Winnipeg-Montreal game, Calgary-Saskatchewan game. Now, it doesn't matter to Calgary or Montreal, but it does matter to Winnipeg and Saskatchewan. I mean, it does feel like a foregone conclusion that Montreal will kind of be resting their guys, but hey, you never know what can happen in the Canadian Football League. How are you feeling about your team? Playoffs or not? I'd love to hear about it at twoandout.ca. You can rate, review, and subscribe to the show on your favorite podcatcher, and check us out on YouTube as well. Sheldon Jones will be back later this week as we get you ready for week 20 of the CFL season. I'm Travis Currah. I hope you've enjoyed your Thanksgiving and are ready for the last 2 weeks of the regular season.
Thanks for listening. Find more great shows like this at CF Pod Network on Twitter.